two.
Welcome to our podcast. This is the second in a new series that Tom had coined Opportunities Hidden in Plain Sight. And this one is going to focus a bit on why companies talk about the wrong things. And I mean, we see it all the time where we're talking to technical companies and they want to talk about their products, but they kind of forget the customer. And we have found some data that really does support everything that we've seen. One is an Harvard Business Review article that said only 15% of companies have truly customer-centric strategies. And McKinsey said that only about 15% of the organization consistently incorporates customer insights into their decision making. So it's, 85% of the companies that we talk to are kind of what they want to tell us all about the product before they want to talk about customers. So Tom, why don't you start us off on this?
Well, it connects a lot to the last podcast we did where we talked about the fact that power in a technical buying situation is actually shifting away from technical buyers. It doesn't mean that you should ignore technical buyers. They're still really important. They should probably be one of your top priorities in your plan. It's just that they don't carry the weight that they used to. And that was the subject of our last podcast. We talked about influence mapping, kind of leading you to have a more holistic message and understanding of, the business buyer, the operational buyer, and the economic buyer, and trying to learn, the language that they speak. And frankly, the language that most technical firms talk is we tend to call it the attribute trap. These people that are selling are often ex-engineers, and they are enthralled with the technical, nature of the products. And that's what they tend to talk about with the people that they're selling to. And again, that can be somewhat effective, not even always effective with the technical buyer. But it falls on deaf ears when you begin to talk to somebody who cares more about what's the business benefit of this technology that you're bringing in? Why are you charging so much when the economic buyer, gets involved? So, let's talk a little bit about, the mistakes that we see, the attribute trap that many companies fall into, and what's the way out of it? What is the sort of antidote so that you can begin to have better conversations, not just with the technical buyer, but with these other types of economic and business and operational buyers as well. Mary, what do you see? Do you have some examples of where this is um,
I do. I thought,
ample?
yeah, because I think this is kind of a holy grail for me. That's probably why we like our jobs, and we find that it's always a challenge too. The most obvious one is BlackBerry when they were just so in love with that click feature that they thought surely Apple couldn't come along, and they don't have clicks, so we're superior. And they also focused a lot on secure emails, which yes, that's important. And if the technical person in the company was the only one making the decision, that was fine. But they forgot that whole experience that Apple had brought along with iPhone really did shift. It's what customers needed, and they didn't shift along with it. So we know what happened to BlackBerry. And same thing with IBM. I really tried to find some good B2B examples, and IBM was superior at talking about mainframe performance and proprietary architecture and all this stuff. And just as you said before in our first series, that decision making shifted, and when competitors came along, they're like, open systems, what about having more flexibility with what you want to do. And as we saw, IBM had to make a major pivot to be able to stay in the game, if you will. And those are just two examples of where they got blinded by their own technology and their success with that, but customers wanted something different.
Your
How
your
about you?
examples are more relevant to our audiences than mine. Those are two great B2B examples, but I think there's a B2C example that I always talk about that I think illustrates how you move beyond this attribute trap. When Apple came out and introduced the iPod, there was a lot of other MP3 players already in the market. And it basically everyone was talking about, this thing that was like a 5 gigabyte MP3 player, and everybody was talking about this new technology in very, very technical terms. And Apple and Steve Jobs came up with a very, very simple, benefit-laden way to say what the iPod could do. They would say, well, why? Internally at Apple, their conversations around marketing were, why are 5 gigabytes of an MP3 player important? Well, the famous billboards. 10,000 songs in your pocket. Okay, now that's something that people can begin to understand and really relate to. And no matter whether you're a very technical person or an early adopter or a later adopter, that kind of resonated with a lot of people. And it is the example for me that shows how you take a attribute and turn it into a benefit. Well, you ask that famous question, why is this important? And it leads to, something that actually begins to matter to a business, to an operation, to an individual that is not necessarily into the bits and bytes and the deep, detailed nature of your technology.
Yeah, I think that to add to your consumer example, New Coke, is one where they were, just because you can doesn't mean you should. In Coke's case, is they came
Oh,
up with a new technology, a new taste, and they thought, oh, this is it, this taste preference. But they missed the bigger experience that Coke provided in that brand that they had built, all of their energy around. So you could see them in the lab, like, oh, do you like this or this? But that when you put the Coke name on it, it was different. It was a whole experience that they had kind of miscalculated.
yeah.
Um, and then going back to more of the B2B examples, and some of the experiences that we've had recently, Tom, I think the companies that we work with, that we watch them kind of evolve, from talking about in oil and gas, here's
Mhm.
the hardware and it's superior and these things, or
Mhm.
here's the software. And they've been shifting over the years to really talk about, better field performance or better business performance. And that, customers perk up when all of a sudden it's like, oh, they of course, we know that they, depending on who you're talking to within an account, you might have to go deeper in and explain some of the technical things, but no one's going to hear anything about technical and with your company can do better, you can do better. So, your customers can do better once they stay open with that and really understand that. I think that opens up so many more opportunities for them. Same thing in medical devices. Here's a gadget that can go into your heart faster. Yet, when they really talk about, what's the overall, experience of the doctor, of the OR system, of the hospital, it makes a big difference.
Well, the way you're having this problem is if you have the opportunity to listen to salespeople from your organization, either role playing or talking to customers, and it's shocking, even some of the ones that are deemed really good salespeople, how quickly they get to talking about their product. And where we see the shift happening in companies like our oil and gas clients is where the conversation used to be about really early on, our product does this or our product does that. Now they're starting to talk to internally when there's talking about their plan, or externally customers, the sentences almost start with like, our customers are trying to do this, or our customers are trying to do that. And that's when you've begun to create the shift, that that benefits ladder, and that why is this important rule is meant to do to lift you out of that attribute trap and begin to talking in a language that that'll take you beyond the technical buyer. We even have a great client in a very technical industry that is implementing a storytelling technique that is really useful for staying out of the attribute chat, or even staying out of talking about yourself at all. they're actually requiring their people to be able to tell a complete story about a product or a solution without mentioning their company's name or the product's name. And it can be done. You can tell this big story about it. It forces you to tell the story from the client's perspective. This is the problem that the client's facing, and this is what they've tried in the past, and this has been their frustrations. And then along, came this particular solution without mentioning the company name or the solution. Along comes this thing that allows them to do this and this and this, and now they're achieving their goals. And the exercise is to be able to tell a story in that manner without mentioning the product or the company name. Because at the end, what does the customer do if you've done it right? They say, well, tell me more about this product, which is a great place to be.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's just so many opportunities. I'm glad that you brought up the attribute trap also because it seems like simple. It's like, oh yeah, okay, I'll talk about what the customer needs versus what we have. But it has, you have to bend your mind to do it. You have to really start with what is the customer, help me to, what is it that they want first? And then you can go back and find solutions easily, that have the attributes, features, functions. But helping your salespeople move in that direction is tricky. And then, like Tom said, but the graduate school is when you get to the point where your organization and your salespeople are able to use storytelling as a way to really, find customer. I mean, exactly what they want to hear. Companies that are the that really focus on like a customer need how more money on improvement. So we're hoping that some of the things we're doing are either you're doing it or you're going to try it.
Yeah. I think we would be remiss.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about the Vietnam card sort methodology. Um, one of the ways that I mean, look, we talked a lot about this as a problem of the sales force, right? Talking and getting stuck in the attribute trap. And maybe the marketers are contributing to that by not lifting, the dialogue from beyond the attributes into benefits, by asking why is that important and doing the benefit laddering technique. But maybe you're already there as a marketer and you're trying to make that happen. One of the things that we've found to be really successful, if you can get the sales to participate, is in our Vietnam card sort technique. I'll briefly explain. We talked about it numerous times on our podcast, but it's the idea of once you've done the laddering and you can get to, several higher level benefits, 4 or 5 benefits that truly represent business and economic and maybe some technical needs, but it's more of a mixture of the three. We've seen a lot of our marketing clients providing the sales force with just those 4 or 5 benefits on an index card or within a computer program, and leading the client through a process where they ask the client a question, and that is, we're trying to understand you better. We think that maybe these are 4 or 5 benefits that you are trying to achieve. It's our hypothesis. What have we missed? And once you tell us, what we've missed, can you put them, in order of importance to you? And what we're finding is that that particular technique is substituting for what could be $100,000 or more of market research, because you can have many of those conversations in a very short period of time and learn a tremendous amount about customer needs and actual benefits that they're seeking. And customers, while they might look at you weirdly when you first ask the question, if you want to participate in that kind of activity where they review the benefits and put them in order, they end up engaging. And salespeople around the globe for 10 years have reported to us that it leads to excellent conversations, even with clients that they thought they knew very, very well. So this is a way out of the attribute trap. It's a way to get maybe higher level dialogue with the different types of buyers in an organization, and get a lot of intelligence and insight into customers really, really fast and inexpensively.
You can easily the cards if you do it. So anyway, I look forward to your comments.
Thank you.